Welcome to TPM Vid's Disney Beat, where we talk about all things Disney. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon to be notified when we upload a new video. We also have Instagram and Twitter. You can find us at TPM Videos. Here on the channel, we've talked about the fastest rides, the longest, and the best rides. There are dozens of amazing rides at the 4 Walt Disney World theme parks, but they do have some sour apples mixed into the bunch. Usually my opinions are pretty positive and optimistic, but I think it's time to buckle down and give you some hot takes on Walt Disney World. On Instagram and Twitter, I asked you what the worst rides at Walt Disney World were, so this list was also constructed with the help of all of you. This is also a perfect time to mention that TPM Vids now has TikTok. You can find us at the TPM Vids, so be sure to follow for more Disney theme park magic. Now sit back and be sure to keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside as we count down the top 10 worst rides at Walt Disney World. Number 10. This first ride we're going to start off with is PrimevalWhirl at Disney's Animal Kingdom. Now in July of 2020, Disney announced that they would be closing this ride for good. But since the coaster structure is still up in Dinorama, it needs a spot on the list, sort of as an honorable mention. Now, a lot of people have issues with the Dinorama theming, thinking it looks like a cheap carnival in a parking lot, but that's exactly what Imagineers were going for. I think the theming works really well for being a roadside attraction, and there's a lot of detail here with a pretty extensive backstory. I've always been a fan of the theme, but why was PrimevalWhirl one of the worst rides then? Well, theming aside, I just don't think the ride was very enjoyable. In a way, this Wild Mouse coaster was unique since the cars spun, but the ride just left you feeling really dizzy. For me, the dizziness always overshadowed the thrill. You spun a lot, plus it became a very rough experience as it aged over the years. With Disney just flat out closing the ride, I guess this backs up the claim of it being one of the worst rides, doesn't it? Apparently the ride was a maintenance nightmare since the manufacturer of the coaster is now defunct. I mean, I kind of predicted that the ride would end up this way when it went seasonal in 2019. Number 9. This next ride might be a bit controversial, but when I asked you all on Instagram and Twitter which Disney rides are the worst, a lot of you said It's a Small World. Firstly, I think we can all agree that this ride is a classic. It's a Small World at the 1964 World's Fair was monumental. It paved the way for so many of the Disney rides we have today. But with that aside, a lot of you still don't like it. So I asked you why on Instagram, and these were some of the reasons. A lot of you said the ride was creepy and it felt like the animatronic dolls were staring into your soul. You know what? You're not entirely wrong. The dolls do kind of have these dead eyes, but it personally doesn't bother me too much. Then the second most popular reason why this ride was the worst was because of the song. It just repeats itself over and over and over again. Mind you, the song is sung in many different languages, but throughout the 13-minute ride, the tune is very repetitive. It can get pretty annoying. That aside, it does have a great message though, since it's an anthem for world peace, something that the world needs a lot of right now. Number 8. When it comes to the rides at Animal Kingdom, most live up to the expectations and deliver a Disney experience. But when it comes to Cali River Rapids, it really falls short. Literally. I've heard from many first-timers say, that's it, as the ride ends. For a River Rapids ride, it's very short and tame when you compare it to others in the Orlando area, or just any theme park for that matter. It feels like Disney forgot to build part of the ride, and it's kind of true since it was supposed to be a much longer experience. The original plans called for the ride to be named Tiger River Run. All the empty space behind the ride was actually meant for the original concept. It would feature live animals in the same fashion as Kilimanjaro safaris, showcasing the animals native to Asia. But after some budget cuts, the ride was scaled back and it became Cali River Rapids. Prior to construction, Disney canceled even more elements, leaving us with only one major show scene, which was the deforestation area. Now, the ride isn't horrible. I mean, the theming is pretty detailed, but you don't get very wet for it being a rapids ride where the norm is to get soaked. Cali River Rapids always leaves me feeling like I was cheated of an experience that could have been much better. Number 7. The next ride on the list is The Seas with Nemo and Friends, and personally, I just think it's a really boring ride when you consider other dark rides at Walt Disney World.
Oh, don't worry, just keep your eyes open for along the way.
Nemo!
It's a way to get into the aquarium of the pavilion and a great escape from the heat, but other than that, I don't think you're missing much. With most Disney dark rides having no height requirement, Nemo really feels like it was designed for younger audiences. It's pretty much just video of Nemo and friends on screens with no animatronics and minimal kinetic elements along the ride. It also doesn't help that over the years, the line for the ride has gotten so long where waiting over an hour is not worth it, in my opinion. There are so many other rides that are just okay, where waiting an hour is more justified. It wouldn't be so bad if the waits were shorter. There just isn't anything imaginative about the ride, and it's pretty forgettable. Don't you agree? When I think of Disney dark rides, Nemo never crosses my mind. Quite frankly, the best part of the ride is when it ends, where you get to explore the aquarium. Now that is impressive. Number 6. Tomorrowland at Magic Kingdom has its own issues as a whole. But let me preface this by saying I love Carousel of Progress, and it's the one attraction on the list that I never miss when I'm at Magic Kingdom. Although it's one of my go-tos, it has to be the worst ride at the resort when it comes to maintenance. Disney has really neglected Carousel of Progress to the point where it's literally falling apart. If you've seen the animatronic malfunction or breakdown videos, we're always talking about this attraction, and its problems all stem from lack of maintenance. Aside from hands falling off, the animatronics have become very stiff over the years. The theater looks really tired and worn out, not to mention that Act 4 is extremely out of date.
You're not going to tell us about the old days when you didn't even have a car phone.
Hey, Trish, for a while we didn't even have a house phone, not to mention Laserdisc.
The attraction really needs some love ASAP. Now, I do enjoy the story of Carousel of Progress, and it could definitely still be relevant in Tomorrowland if they just updated the attraction. I personally don't think they'll ever remove Carousel of Progress completely since it holds so much Disney history. It was one of Walt's favorites, and it's the only attraction at Walt Disney World that Walt was personally involved with. I'll never stop visiting the attraction, but it's really sad seeing it fall into such despair, because it could really be something great. Number 5. Staying in Tomorrowland, the Tomorrowland Speedway has got to be the worst ride in the land as it stands right now. Aside from taking up a lot of valuable space, the ride is just out of date with its gas-powered cars. There's nothing quite like the whiff of fumes you get as you walk by the ride. It's quite the transition from Fantasyland to Tomorrowland. While the Tomorrowland Speedway was closed in 2019 for refurbishment, it was so nice walking through Tomorrowland and not smelling gasoline. This would be such an easy fix for Disney to use electric-powered vehicles, maybe even get Tesla to sponsor the attraction. It would fit the theme of tomorrow much better than the current go-karts. And this is not to say that I hate the ride. Honestly, the first memory I have of driving a car was when I was a kid riding on the Speedway, and I think it's an experience that a lot of us remember. It's just in 2020, there's a better way Disney can do go-karts in a theme park. Also, can I just say that the steering on those cars is the worst? Anyone else agree? It's always a struggle to not have your car hit the rails. Over the years, the Tomorrowland Speedway has been shortened many times, including just last year in 2019. So I wouldn't be surprised if eventually Disney shortens the ride so much that they just remove it altogether and something new takes its place. Number 4. Next on the list is Adventureland's Magic Carpets of Aladdin at Magic Kingdom. Although this is where my favorite camels reside, I do have a couple problems with the ride. The first being location, which is honestly the worst. Before the ride was built in 2001, this area of the land was very open with a lot more room to move. The ride's pretty compact, but it's placed right in the middle of Adventureland. It takes up way too much room. There's always a bottleneck around this area since the paths are so narrow, but this was never a problem before the carpets. Honestly, if Disney ever decides to remove the spinner, I'd be sad to lose the camels, but wouldn't be opposed to it, especially since the park already has 3 other spinners. Dumbo is a classic, and Astro Orbiter at least gives you a unique view of the park. And I get creating rides with no height requirements, but a majority of the rides at Magic Kingdom already fall into this category. When you look at the ride mixed in with the overall theme of Adventureland, it kinda stands out like a sore thumb. In my opinion, it brings too much fantasy into the land. Now what do you think? Number 3. The next ride is Mission Space in Future World at Epcot. Now when this ride first made its debut in 2003, people were kind of upset that this replaced the classic dark ride Horizons. It was seen as a downgrade, and right off the bat, there was chatter about the ride being too intense.
Those who are prone to motion sickness or made uncomfortable by enclosed dark spaces, simulators, or spinning should bypass this experience.
The attraction spins vigorously and exposes you to forces up to 2.5 G, which is twice the force of gravity at the Earth's surface. It was so intense that Disney made motion sickness bags available at arm's reach on the ride. You know, a Disney ride is a bit too intense when there's barf bags involved. I think this might be the only one. Now, I love thrill rides. Drop me over 300 feet down a coaster and I'm in heaven. But the orange mission on Mission Space made me so dizzy and nauseous that I had to sit down for a half an hour. It was honestly one of the worst rides I've been on. But there is the green mission that is much less intense. That one doesn't spin you, but instead you just feel some rattles and shakes. It's okay, but the big issue with the ride cabins on both missions is how claustrophobic it makes you feel. There isn't much room in there, and I'm not someone who gets claustrophobic, but this ride just hits differently. TripAdvisor had some great reviews for the ride. Sand said the ride was like a torture chamber. Hearts1 said it wasn't fun, it was painful. And Hot Beach Mamas said she was surprised this wasn't a Saw movie. So the people have spoken. Now there are some who don't mind this ride, but for me, it's honestly one of the worst rides. Number 2. I said earlier that I don't mind the theming of Dinorama. I actually really enjoy this area, but I still think Triceratops Spin is one of the worst rides at Walt Disney World. Now, I get its purpose. It's a ride for a younger demographic since there isn't much for families with young children at Animal Kingdom. But it's literally Dumbo with dinosaurs. And out of the other 3 spinners at the resort, this one gives you the worst views. If you've done Dumbo, you've done Triceratops Spin. Now, since PrimevalWhirl has closed, I don't think there's much time left for this ride and the land as a whole. I'm not saying it's going to close immediately, but in the future, we'll definitely see Disney making way for something new in this area. Number 1. Oh, Figment. As a character, you're adorable, and I always come pay you a visit, but when we look at Journey into Imagination as a whole, it's one of the worst rides at Walt Disney World. For something that takes place in the Imagination Pavilion, the ride lacks a lot of imagination and innovation. Not to mention, this is another ride that Disney has neglected in terms of maintenance. Figment's mobility has become pretty stiff over the years in the Sound Lab, and the ride has just been plagued with audio issues. Now, this might be one of the worst rides, but this version of Journey into Imagination may not be the worst version we've seen. That award goes to Journey into Your Imagination, which was far worse. But when you consider the original version of the ride, this is a replacement that fell short. Since debuting in 2002, it's really starting to show its age in terms of technology. Figment looks like he belongs in one of those knockoff Disney animated films. Surely with Disney being an animation studio, they could bring him up to modern animation standards. Dare I say even maybe replace Nigel Channing with another actor and create a new storyline? It has been rumored that this would be a ride that will eventually get a refurbishment. So I guess we'll have to see what the future has in store for Journey into Imagination. So in your opinion, what's the worst ride at Walt Disney World? I'd love to know. Leave a comment down below to start a conversation, and don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video.